Good evening and welcome to Friday Night Frenzy, the show the players watch. I'm Sam Ali. Makasanak and Turchiev aren't the only players on the Yellow Jackets team with international ties. Now, we've heard from coaches, we've heard from players, but we haven't heard from this man, UMD Athletic Director Josh Burlow. The theme of this week is rivalries, and if the tension makes you a bit uncomfortable, then you might want to avoid Saints Field this Saturday. Well, welcome back to Friday Night Frenzy. For this week's Coach's Corner, we're talking high school lacrosse with the Duluth Wolfpack. I'm joined by Coach Scott Wishart and Will Smythe. Jaden Erie, how are you guys doing? Well, coming up in sports, we're going to check in with the Denfeld baseball team as they get set for their first trip to state in over 60 years. I'm joined now by relief pitcher Taylor Rogers. Taylor, thanks for taking time to talk to us.
Yeah, thanks you guys for having us.
I'm pretty good at explaining things, but even I'm having a hard time describing the goal UMD's Gabby Hughes scored this past weekend. Coach Kleppe added that his players, especially the seniors, shouldn't take what they've accomplished for granted. The AV broadcasting class at Proctor High School not only gives students a chance to work behind the camera, but in front of it as well. It was business as usual for the Northwoods boys basketball team as they blazed through the Section 7A tournament. A couple months ago, they had the 1-0 lead on Duluth East all the way up until the closing moments of that third period. Team captain Sydney Brott told us the team is walking around with a little bit more confidence nowadays. 6 inductees going in this year, including my guest at this time, legendary hockey coach Willard Eikola. The Duluth East boys soccer team have made it to the state championship for the first time in program history. Standing in their way, Stillwater. For Danny Huffman, sports was always a big part of his life.
Growing up in my family in general, it was always who was the best athlete.
But when he got to high school, things started to change.
All of a sudden that started hindering my playing time with the sports, even though I was one of the best players on the team. You know, I wasn't going to school, coaches were benching me, then I was out of games, and there went all my high school sports that I always dreamed to play. That was always the biggest thing in my life.
Huffman ended up here at the Arrowhead Juvenile Detention Center several times while attending Denfeld High School, but that wasn't even the worst of his experiences as a teenager.
My house has been shot up. You know, I've done things that I don't like to talk about, that I'm not proud of. I got quite a bit of stitches across my head here, then fractured my skull from a kid hitting me in the head with a brick. Just overdoing the same stupid stuff.
But then, after watching a Floyd Mayweather fight, Hoffman had an epiphany.
This is awesome. Everyone's loving Floyd Mayweather. He's got all the fans, all the girls, everything, and he's making money for it. While I'm going to jail for doing the same exact thing, but outside of the ring.
And that's when he came here, the Jungle Boy Boxing Gym, run by former professional boxer Zach Walters.
The door cracks open, and in walks Danny. He kind of stands around, kind of looking at stuff, nodding his head and whatnot. And I'm like, "Can I help you?" He's like, "Want to talk about joining boxing?"
Actually, for the first couple months, I didn't tell my mom, I didn't tell my dad, I didn't tell anyone I was boxing.
I said, "You want to start today or tomorrow?" And he said, "I'll start with you tomorrow." And usually that means they're never coming back. Some people just like to come in and get some credit for coming in and seeing the gym, and then, "Yeah, I stopped in there, and I'm about to start." You know, but with Danny, he came back, and he busted his butt.
After recording a 28-8 amateur record, the decision to go pro was made.
Jungle brought it up. He's like, "Well, you know, the next step is going pro." And kind of hit me just out of nowhere. You know, I thought about it, and I was like, "Well, you're the only one I'll fight for, so if you want to do it, I'm in too."
You're starting out 0-0, so your amateur accomplishments give you a resume, but now what are you going to do with your pro boxing career? It's all potential. Are you going to actualize your potential or not? So there's a little bit of pressure there.
And it won't be your average debut, as Huffman will be one of the headliners at Saturday's Generation Next event at the Deck, and he will be the only local boxer on the card.
Attention and adoration he's getting from the locals is way more than I could have ever expected for anybody else turning pro. Like, holy smokes, people just love Danny Huffman. This is great.
But that pressure is nothing compared to the pressure of raising his 1-year-old son Ethan alongside his girlfriend Noelle.
Having my son was definitely an eye-opener, and I realized, you know, I can't keep getting in trouble anymore for him, for his sake. You know, I'm putting my family in danger by some of the people that I was hanging around with and some of the things I was doing. I don't want him to be involved with that. I hope he can look back and be proud of me and want to be like me someday, and I want to be a good role model to him.
With family, friends, and the entire Northland behind him, Huffman is looking to continue to excel at a sport that literally saved his life.
He said, Jungle, you know, this boxing, I think it's saved my life, because there's a couple times when former friends of his got into stuff, and he's like, if I wasn't with you on this boxing trip, I'd be there getting into that stuff.
There was a time there where I think everyone was a little worried for me about what was going to happen, and at that point I didn't even care what was going to happen to me. You know, I was just down the wrong path, and it really did save my life. A big thing that I always regretted was I never got to play any high school sports, and that was so big in my family. And this kind of gave me a second chance, and now here I am 4 years later. I'm about to turn professional. Just really excited.
So this Saturday, right here at the deck, Huffman will look to knock out his opponent just like he knocked out his troubled past. Doors open at 6. The event starts at 7. For information on tickets, head to Ticketmaster.com. Next month, Andrew Stanfield will be representing Team USA at the International Powerlifting Federation World Championships in Helsingborg, Sweden. But how he got to this point has put as much strain on his body as the weights he trains with.
They noticed during an ultrasound that his belly was bigger than his head. And so they were like, okay, that's weird, it's not good. We should check that out. We need to keep an eye on it. And then there's some stuff wrong. His kidneys don't look right, so we're gonna keep an eye on this over time.
We kind of realized like 8, 9, a little later, that I was kind of a little bit different like that. But I mean, I've always been a stocky kid, so I mean, if you're kind of different like that, I've pretty much all my life I've been a little different.
As we got closer to his birth, they warned us. He's probably one of those kids that will just kind of not play a lot of sports, not a lot of contact sports for sure, and they couldn't really put a name to what was going on.
Commonly known as prune belly, Eagle-Barrett syndrome is a rare genetic disorder that is usually diagnosed before birth. It mainly impacts the abdominal wall as well as the urinary system. Nearly a quarter of those who receive the diagnosis die before they are born, but in Stanfield's case, he wasn't diagnosed until the age of 10.
A urologist in Tacoma, he just said to us, he looks like a kid who has prune belly. And I said, well, what's prune belly? He goes, well, it's Eagle-Barrett syndrome. And I said, well, why don't you think he has prune belly? And he said, well, because he's still alive. And like my heart stopped. As a parent, I was like, is he gonna die?
I have something that other kids do, and these other kids, they can't do anything. They have no fitness careers because it's such a strain on their bodies, because if they get hit anywhere wrong, it could be fatal.
But Andrew would build up his strength and was eventually cleared to participate in sports like baseball, wrestling, and football.
I wanted to try them all because it was just something I never had access to as a kid. You know, it was something that I wasn't allowed to because all my doctors said no.
The Stanfields moved to Duluth in 2015 and decided to homeschool their son for his sophomore year of high school, and that decision created tension in the family.
It was nobody around basically for me to hang out with, so it was just me being at home. And then eventually I just got super mad one day because I was just kind of fed up with being with just my parents. I wanted to be out, I wanted to be doing something, so I got in a fight with my dad.
Seeing him get brought in and, handcuffs and ankle shackles, that was quite sobering as a parent, and I think it was pretty sobering for him.
Stanfield was arrested and spent 24 hours in a juvenile detention center, which he says helped him realize his mistakes.
Occasionally we disagree about little stupid things, but I mean, I haven't gotten a big fight with him or my brother or my family really a lot. It's just kind of, I avoid that kind of thing now because I realize that stupid decisions, stupid mistakes, and little stupid stuff that I disagree about aren't something worth fighting for.
Shortly after the incident, Stanfield was introduced to aerial athletics in Duluth, and his father's passion of powerlifting rubbed off on him.
He talked to me about how like one day in high school he squatted 500 pounds, and 500 pounds sounded really heavy to me. I was like, wow. And he's like, I weighed like 145 pounds when I did it too. I was a really skinny kid that did it. I was like, that sounds amazing to me. Like, that sounds like something I would love to do.
I remember the first time he said to me, I squatted 5:05 today, I was like, well, that's it. I'm not as tough as he is.
Some people, though, are just gifted at this, and if obviously you see Andrew, you look at him, you're like, yeah, he's strong. Like he's just kind of, him and his family knew that, and they just rolled with it. The other side of it is he's super humble, so it works well for just continuing to put the work in, and he's not kind of taking anything for granted.
He would go on to break several state records and took first place in his age group at a national meet back in October, and now he will represent his country this summer.
I cried a little. I was pretty excited. It was a big deal.
And my mom's like, oh my God, amazing, how? Like, thank you. I was like, oh, that's amazing. It was just the best thing in the world at that point. It had trumped anything beforehand. Like, I had never felt so good.
From being born with a fatal genetic disorder to literally fighting with his family, Stanfield just hopes his flight across the Atlantic is much smoother than his road to becoming one of the rising stars in the powerlifting world.
I have not been into an appointment for a while, and it's actually really weird, but I rarely think about it anymore. I really think about how I do still have this Eagle-Barrett syndrome, how my abs don't function properly. It's kind of like a second thought now.
People can look at that and say, well, all the junk I'm going through right now, if a 17-year-old kid can get it together and focus and make it happen, maybe I can too.
Every single day, that community is always there for me, and community is the number one thing. Even when you're going through hell, community can be there for you, and that's just kind of one of my favorite things to think about all the time, is that always there are going to be people behind me.
The Stanfields have started a GoFundMe page to raise money so that Andrew can share his special moment with his parents and younger brother. If you would like to donate, follow the link on our website at fox21online.com.